Hi there. Why are you stuck in your life? We are going to look at 5 reasons why that might be. And at the end of the video, we are going to look at some potential solutions with the help of the tarot. So, buckle up, make yourself comfortable, and we're going to get right into it. But before we do, I would like to remind you that this is a channel where we do ASMR, psychology, and tarot. So if that's your thing, I recommend that you subscribe or like this video to be further notified about new videos. Okay, so let's see. The first reason that might be causing you to feel stuck. The number one reason is perfectionism. So, perfectionism, I would say, is the most common reason for why you would be feeling stuck. When we are in a state of perfectionism, we are, and look at that, isn't this gonna be funny? Perfectionism. I couldn't fit the whole word there. So yeah, when you get started with something, you cannot always guarantee to yourself that the outcome is going to be perfect. And that's okay. That's part of the game. So when you are in a perfectionist mindset, you're expecting everything to converge to an ideal that you have in your mind. And deep down, you know that it's never going to be like that. So it's better not to even get started with anything. So perfectionism is going to make you feel paralyzed. It's going to make you feel misunderstood. So just check in with yourself and try to see if this applies to you. I'm going to say some statements and try to check if it rings true to how you feel and what your experience is. I am very concerned about the quality of my work. I want things to be perfect or next to perfect. If you can't do something well, then it's better not to do it at all. I'm very strict with myself, and I often find myself critical and judgmental of my own actions and of the actions of others. I find it difficult to relax. I think that the world expects me to do great things. And I'm constantly falling short of these expectations. The second reason why you might be feeling stuck is addiction. So a lot of us have addictive personalities, and what that means really is that we are hypersensitive to pain. And if you're familiar with Gabor Mate's work, you will know that addiction is not a hedonistic seeking of pleasure. So when you are addicted or when you display addictive behaviors, it's a self-soothing strategy, a maladaptive coping strategy, but nevertheless, the purpose is to try and find a way to calm yourself down. So that's all that addiction is, really, truly. No matter what your vice is, no matter what it is, it could be shopping, it could be porn, it could be substances. Anything that you can get addicted to serves the purpose of giving you some sort of false stability. Now, this is something that can cause you to be severely hindered in your life. Addiction is a cage. It takes away your freedom and your self-confidence. It paralyzes you. So I would like you to try and ask yourself if you are noticing any addictive elements in your life. Are there any behaviors, patterns, or substances in your life that, if we take them away, you panic? You feel like you have no stability. It feels as though something awful is happening. Just think about that. Try to see if it strikes a chord with you. And by the way, the 5 reasons that I'm going to give you, all of them might apply to you, none of them, or perhaps 1 or 2. So, we'll see. Number 3. The 3rd reason that you might be feeling stuck is that you are waiting for permission. From our early days of our lives, we have been conditioned to think and to believe that we don't have agency, that we don't have the right to make decisions for ourselves. At least most of us were brought up in this paradigm. If you think about how in school you are trained, you are conditioned to only follow instructions and to not be able to think for yourself. That's some hardcore training that is hard to override. And when your self-will and your connection to yourself even is damaged or diminished, that is going to make you feel stuck, because you will be waiting for someone to give you the right type of instructions, the right kind of insight to be able to move forward. But it will never come, because it is your life and you need to find out what the next step is. And that's very hard for many of us who are brought up thinking that we don't know how to how to govern our lives, how to make decisions for ourselves. And for many of us, this is also present in our families. So often, you're not allowed to decide for yourself what you want to do or how you want to be and who you want to be. Your parents are deciding for you. So those kinds of patterns will remain ingrained within you in adulthood unless you do something about that. So in order to see if this applies to you, let's see if the following statements resonate with you. I often feel guilty. I sometimes find it difficult to make decisions. I'm worried that I'm going to make a bad choice. I don't trust myself, and I don't trust my own judgment. Next on our list is lack of authenticity. So that's the fourth reason. Lack of authenticity. That actually is, in a way, tying into the third reason. So it is quite possible that there's an overlap here. But in general, lack of authenticity means that you don't have a true connection to who you are, to your desires. That whenever you interact with others, it comes from a place of what is expected of you instead of how you truly feel in the moment. So this, again, is the result of some faulty parental strategies. And society in general might be very disencouraging of authenticity. So you might have been programmed to want to hide your true self because showing your true self was dangerous. So it creates a false self that is built on what you think other people need from you, or how you think society or people in general will accept you. Now, this is a very, very painful state to be in. A lack of authenticity is self-betrayal. You might not be noticed, you might not be picked on, you might not have so much pain in your life coming from an external source, but nevertheless, you are not connected with who you truly are. And it creates suffering. So check if the following statements are true for you. I feel like nobody can see my true self. It seems to me that nobody really cares about me. I want to do things, but I cannot really stick to them. I lose my patience. I cannot be committed. Nothing really brings me happiness. I I feel very apathetic, and I feel as though I'm not even alive. The fifth and final reason is a very tricky one, and this is probably my favorite, if this is an appropriate term here. A false perception of stuckness. So, yes, that's true. A lot of it comes down to how you perceive yourself to be. And your perception, your understanding of where you stand, where you're going, what you're doing. It defines your reality. So, a false perception of stuckness can actually generate a feeling of stuckness. Let's try to investigate and let's try to find out what it would mean to not be stuck. How does that look like, really? And you may find that it might not be as different from where you are at the moment. Things are happening, life is flowing, things are changing. So, where does this feeling of stuckness come from? It might actually be connected with the first reason, perfectionism. You might be thinking that there should be a version of your life available to you that is flowing much quicker, or where you are capable of much better things. Perhaps that is only a product of your imagination. Perhaps it's an unrealistic image. Perhaps you are achieving more and you are doing more and you have accomplished more than what you are giving yourself credit for. So a good way to check if this is true is to think of, let's think of a moment in time in the past when things were different. So let's think back to, let's say, 5 or 10 years. And let's try to compare with as much objectivity as you can. Just compare the facts of your existence. And if you're noticing some progress, perhaps it's a mixed bag of some things are better, some things are worse, that already is something different than being stuck. So notice on the things that have changed for you. And if you find that there are indeed some good developments, there's an evolution that's happening, but you're not feeling as though it's happening, then the fifth reason is appropriate to your situation. Now, let's try and find out with the tarot if there are any good pieces of advice that a tarot can give you in terms of your problem. So, if your problem is perfectionism, Let's see what the tarot has to say. If your problem is addiction, what is the advice? If your problem is waiting for permission, if your problem is lack of authenticity, and if your problem is false perception of stuckness. So we have 5 cards for each problem. All right. Perfectionism. Here we have the Knight of Wands. Very good. Number 2, addiction. The Fool. Number 3, waiting for permission. The 9 of Cups. And number 4, lack of authenticity. The Queen of Swords. And finally, a false perception of stuckness. Justice. All right, so we already can see that there's some good advice shaping up here. So first, let's see the Knight of Wands. For your perfectionism. So as I said, perfectionism it originates from an unrealistic expectations of things going smoothly. And the problem is with perfectionism is that it is the natural enemy of getting things done. The Knight of Wands here, which is the Knight of Fire, is a character that has very little concern for the consequences of his actions. One could say that he is reckless. He does not deliberate. He does not weigh his options. He just goes and does whatever is on his mind. He's very spontaneous, very volatile, impulsive. The opposite of what a perfectionist would be. So, the Knight of Wands is asking you to let go of the idea that you can control everything, to try and purposefully be reckless with, creative endeavors or things where your recklessness does not result in life-threatening consequences. So obviously, if you're a brain surgeon or if you're a NASCAR driver, perfectionism serves you well. In those situations, probably you would want to strive to be as close to perfect as you can be. But that's a different story. So if you're in those kinds of professions, then this does not apply to you, but most of us aren't. Our mistakes are at best or at worst putting us into awkward positions, and that's okay. So the Knight of Wands is suggesting that you drop the facade that you have to be concerned and cautious, and that you have to be very carefully planning every step. The Knight of Wands is asking you to try and experiment with those kinds of things that you identify as not very high risk. So if you can think of anything in your life where you tend to be perfectionist, but your perfectionism is completely senseless, try and introduce a little bit of wildness there. So let's say that you like to clean your apartment in a perfect way. Now, your challenge is to do it in 5 minutes. And to, for example, this is just an example, but you can come up with any kind of challenge for yourself. But, the time limit would restrict you in such a way that you would have to come up with creative and less accurate, less perfectionistic solutions, and see if you can get something out of that. So that's what the Knight of Wands is asking you to do. In terms of addiction, the Fool is indicating that there is a completely new path that you need to embark on. And seeing your addiction-free life as a burden, as a task, as a threatening alternative reality is not going to help you. Actually, as someone who has shedded one of my addictive behaviors, or a couple of them, but one big one, I had a severe addiction in my life, or at least a very, I don't want to say dangerous, but a very destructive addiction in my life that I was able to drop a couple years ago. And the Fool is telling you that it doesn't have to be a daunting reality. It can be an adventure. And actually, when you can switch your mindset, your perception to understand that this is a challenge, that this is an adventure, your life without X behavior or X substance, that's when you can do it. And for me, the point in time when I was able to let it go was when I realized that this could open up a whole new range of opportunities for me, that this was indeed an adventure of sorts. And I was excited about that. So inviting that energy of being excited about the unfamiliar, because addiction is something that it's familiar to you, but you know that it's bad and it's sad and it's awful. But nevertheless, taking a risk to venture out into the unknown, to try and experiment with a different lifestyle, is the thing that's going to pull you out of this feeling stuck. Waiting for permission. Here we have the 9 of Cups. And the 9 of Cups is very simply drawing your attention to the fact that your happiness is in your hands. This might sound very crude or very unforgiving, but it is the truth. Your happiness is in your hands. Your emotional well-being is your responsibility. And no one is going to be able to feel what you feel. So even if there was someone who could give you perfect instructions or who could give you permission, they could never feel the results of your actions. So it's kind of a heuristic method of finding happiness that you can try here. Try doing something and see how it makes you feel, and let that be your compass. It sounds easy, it sounds very simple, but it's not. For many of us who are disconnected from our feelings, and the 9 of Cups here is identifying that as the source or the core of the issue. So practicing rebuilding that connection with your feelings, practicing noticing when something feels good and using that as your guide instead of waiting for external permissions. You can do this with, once again, with very simple, very small things. Just for example, meditating, sitting. You can try different positions, or doing yoga. You can try different positions and see which one works for you best. Following the yoga instructor's instructions blindly is going to lead to injury. It's going to lead to strain in your muscles, because everybody's body is different. So practicing to quote-unquote rebel in that way, practicing to perhaps put on a yoga tutorial or a yoga video and listen to the instructions that the teacher has given you, and go against it if it doesn't feel good, and do something else, something that truly feels good, something that you find your body is responding to well. So that's just one idea. Find what feels good. All right, let's see. Lack of authenticity, the Queen of Swords. Now, the Queen of Swords is suggesting here that in order to find your way back to your authentic self, you are going to have to be very strict and be kind of disciplined in disqualifying thoughts and words and advice that comes from the outside that simply does not work for you. So the Queen of Swords, who is the Queen of Air, the air element, the mentality, the Queen of Swords is famous or notorious for not taking any BS. So the first step towards authenticity is to become perhaps unpleasant, to have that risk, to maintain the possibility that what you say or how you react to another person's propositions might not be polite, it might not be pleasant, it might not be courteous. And that's besides the point. The Queen of Swords is asking you to be up in arms about the protection of your true self. It's the main priority for you. If that's what's causing you to be stuck, then you really have to be militantly protective of your own boundaries. And even if you're quote-unquote wrong, because I think when it comes to your authentic feelings and your authentic self, there's no such thing as wrong. But even if you're wrong, staying true to yourself and sticking by your own principles is the thing to build trust, because a lack of authenticity is the result of self-betrayal. So now you really need to prove to yourself that you can go to war to defend yourself and to stand by yourself. And finally, a false perception of stuckness. And here we have justice. That's interesting, because I think this is suggesting that on some level we are stuck. And that's true. And just by virtue of being alive, just by virtue of being a human being, we are stuck. We are stuck in our physical bodies. We are stuck in our ego consciousness. We are stuck on this earth. We're stuck with people that we don't like. And even the people that we do like, we're stuck with them. That's the nature of human existence, to be stuck. But does that mean that you have to experience it as stuckness? What is the opposite of being stuck? Being free, right? Making progress, flying, being decisive and being on a path. So there are really two ways that you can look at this. And you can focus on what makes you feel stuck, or you can focus on the things that generate progress, a sense of progress in your life. And if you examined your life and you found that you are truly stuck in terms of your circumstances, the conditions of your life, your habits and whatnot, if that's what you found, then it's very obvious that you need to change those things. But if it's just a perception of stuckness, then that's all there is to it. That's all that you need to do with that, is to recognize that, yes, your perception might be right, but is it useful? So the question is not, am I correct in my assumptions? The question is, are my assumptions helping me to feel better or to be more free, or are they keeping me stuck? So I hope that you enjoyed this little video. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.